And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode number 103. Well, we have quite a treat for you today. So we've been doing a little international tour, obviously. We had two beautiful Latvian Aerostars. And my apologies to RL. I think I apologize secondarily if I mispronounce your name. In France, a long time ago, they emailed me. We were talking about foreign Aerostars, sent me three beautiful listings: Poland, Russia, and Switzerland. And unfortunately, enough time has passed now that those listings have all gone. The vehicles have all been sold. So that's very bittersweet because on the one hand, I really wanted to get to those listings. They were excellent listings. And, time and whatever else, just I didn't quite get to it. Now that we're doing our international residency, I went back and looked at the email. And they're all gone. The good news is that means people all over the world are buying Ford Aerostars in the year of our Lord 2023. And I think that's a great thing. But worry not, because there are still many international Aerostars out there. And we have a doozy of one today. So without further ado, here we have a 1985 Ford Aerostar. And there it is, okay? Now this one is listed in Holland or the Netherlands. I don't know what more else to say. It's just an absolute amazing feast for the eyes. I've gotten a little rusty with introducing these things. So the big things that jump out, listed for, so janky, 12,450 euro, which equivalates to $13,249.48. So a very pricey Ford Aerostar. I just sent this to my buddy Ken last night, and who has lived in Holland a little bit, speaks some Dutch. And the first thing that jumped out him was the price. Now, obviously, the first thing that jumped out at me was this beautiful, wonderful, absolutely stunning, handsome, dashing...
The handsome, dashing Ford Aerostar
color scheme. But the price is certainly something. This would be, right up there with the most expensive Aerostars ever sold on the market. You could make an argument that it's worth it. I mean, it certainly is a unique creature here. And it says it only has, 37,873 kilometers, which equivalates to 23,533 miles. I know equivalates isn't a word. Just go with it. Now, we'll get into it. I'm wondering if this is actually miles or kilometers, because we're going to do a little bit of Aerostar sleuthing, and we're going to see whether this is an American spec Aerostar or if it was a European delivered Aerostar. Now, we do know that they were sold natively in France. I'm not sure if they were sold natively in Holland. Perhaps Quirky Garage 1999. You can tell me that because I can never remember, and I apologize for that. The other thing that should immediately jump out at us is that this is listed as a 1985. Now, in America, I should have brought it up. Maybe I can find it in post. There was an article saying how the Aerostar was delayed. It was originally going to come out for the 85 model year. I believe my 1986 was actually produced in 1985, but it was delayed because of some last-minute production concerns, whatever, trying to make this happens all the time in the auto industry. And it was decided that it was going to be launched for the 86 model year. So, one of two things. It's possible that it hit the European market early, and there were actually some 1985 model year Aerostars out there. If that is true, then I need to get my hands on one of those. And trying to have an Aerostar for every year now, I need 13 instead of 12. I need a baker's dozen, because I would have to have a 1985. Just like if you go to the Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky, you can see the world's only 1983 Corvette. And I've done that. So, neither here nor there. The second option is here that they just looked at the stamping on the VIN or whatever, and then it says produced in 1985, so they're just calling it a 1985. that's more likely. And, you know, as I've said, my 86 says it's produced in 85. They look at this stamping, it says 85. They list it as an 85. You know, and they can be forgiven in Holland for not knowing the, you know, minute auto trivia of American minivans. So that's what I'm guessing. But you know, the fact that it's listed as an 85 is certainly curious. Now, as an aside, I'll say on Marketplace, a lot of times I see things listed as 98 Aerostars, 99 Aerostars. Conversely, I see Aerostars from 96 and 97 listed as Windstars. So there's a lot of, like, you know, room for error here. But all that aside, let's get into some of the description. Now, I will say that Merk und Model Utifröring. I speak a little bit of German, and German and Dutch are quite similar, so we can sort of kind of get through this. And basically what I've noticed about Dutch as opposed to German is if you think German is a guttural language, you know, Aufsprache and Duschen, like, just wait till you hear Dutch, because the amount of, like, glottal stops, to use a linguistics parlance, is off the charts. So I'm going to butcher this, but I don't think it's going to be, I mean, certainly not as bad as me butchering Latvian, I'll say that. Kilometer Stand, 37.873. Brandstoff, Benzin, Baujahr 1985. Transmissie Automacht, APK Tot. 20 April 2023. Vermogen 116 Pkt. Mutter in Chud 2,8 Liter. Alle informatie wordt op basis van het kanten getrekt door de ADV. Begeven die met een profiel erachter. Okay. Basis, Merkenmottel, Ford. Utifrönnen. Okay, I read all this. Karosserie, Stationwagen, Transmissieautomat. Kleur, blau. I'm pretty sure that just means color and it's blue. Okay, so that's enough of that. Okay, we have to read the description, which I believe in beschrijving. Nieuwe Aerostar automaat motor lukt niet. Okay, I said it already. 37,873. Aufgelesen. Okay, and then there's a number. Meld an Marktplatz. So a MUI I looked up, and that actually means cool, I guess. So they're saying this is a cool Aerostar, and I'd have to agree with that. So there's me butchering some Dutch. Okay, we got to look at the pictures now. I mean, you know, the fact that this is in Holland, very, very cool. The fact that this is potentially, you know, if it's even if it's not an 85, even if it's just an 86, 86 is extremely rare. The amount of 86 Aerostars that I've stumbled upon. Now, when I bought my 86 Aerostar, the brown one with the manual transmission, I didn't even really know how special it was. It just jumped out at me. It had a manual transmission, and I knew manual transmissions were rare, but I bought that down in Dothan, Alabama. It's a long story, and but I didn't really even understand what I had. You know, to use a marketplace cliche, I don't know what I got. And it really, you know, in the years since, when I've been looking at so many Aerostars, I mean, I gotta say, easily less than 10. I want to say maybe around 5 1986 Aerostars I've ever seen listed on Craigslist or Marketplace, and I've bought 2 of them. So, and then sold one later to my buddy Evan, as most of you know probably by now, me regurgitating that story. So let's look at just a couple of characteristics. Now, I've been talking about these 80s Aerostars. The last one we did in Latvia was a beautiful example of an 80s Aerostar. And one of the things I said was that the only thing that was really missing from my standpoint was these big towing mirrors. And here we have these. Now, these are painted black, matte black. I've seen them in black and I've seen them in silver, like an unpainted silver, which my 86 has. I think they came in both from the factory because I think I've seen some cargo vans with the black mirrors, and indeed I think that is what may differentiate it. I think some of the passenger vans, I don't know why they had towing mirrors on the passenger vans, but I think a lot of the passenger vans got the silver, and I think the cargo vans received the black towing mirrors. Obviously it looks very nice with your door handle and all of your sort of window moldings and your cowl. Now I do see a little bit of jank going on there. I'll say that for, you know, $13,000, you might want to do some paint correction on that. Neither here nor there. I also see a hula girl here. I'm just noticing that. I also have a hula girl in my 86 Aerostar. And, you know, speaking of which, I'm going to be doing a video on some Hawaii things because we're all thinking about the great state of Hawaii, even though it's been a little while since the fires there. Hawaii is near and dear to my heart. Neither here nor there. Okay, the other thing that will jump out at us, these wheels. Now these wheels, this is exactly what I did on my 1993 Ford Aerostar Sport, is I found these original steel wheels, and these were the original sort of steel wheels on the Aerostar. They had these beautiful little dog dish hubcaps with the red. It doesn't even say Ford on it, but it's just, if you know it, you know it's Ford. The Ford GT kind of uses this similar, it's just this little circle with a line through the middle of it. And these dog dish hubcaps, I think, just look so good on these steel wheels, and they painted them to match the body color, just like my green 93 Sport. So certainly, you know, a van after my own heart. All right, only here on Janky AF. The bumpers also unpainted, just black, which again, I think you saw on early, if you look at some of the brochures for the early Aerostars, especially the cargo versions, you know, they became later like these gray painted bumpers, and dark gray, even on any color Aerostar, but they still had some paint on them. These just look like completely unpainted, or maybe they were painted black. I'm not sure, but I don't think these, I think it's very possible that these are black from the factory and they weren't painted. Now, we see, of course, your Aerostar badge on the front quarter panel. That's, you know, a pre-facelift Aerostar thing. I've talked about it a lot. I love the Aerostar badge on the front quarter panel. I think it resembles more of like a sports car. It's a little bit more flashy, and it lets you know right away that you are looking at an Aerostar. Excuse me. The other thing, I've said this before, but the way that A sort of cantilevers over here, it's so genius, because not only does it show you or hint at the profile of the vehicle, because this big slant was like sort of an iconic thing of the Aerostar. So you have the profile of the Aerostar. And then why I think it was so smart to put on the quarter panel is because it's actually on the part of the vehicle that is that profile, this long swinging up line. And it actually isn't an unbroken line. And I've talked about this too. The angle of this line changes from your hood line to your windshield line. It's not one straight line, but it kind of tricks you into thinking it is. And actually, if you look at the space shuttle, which this was sort of styled after, that's not one unbroken line either. So it actually is kind of true to form in that way. So that's kind of cool. But to put it right there, you're just getting one more sort of semi-parallel line. And then you also have your V6 badging. We'll get to that, this V6 badging. We'll talk about that in a bit. But I do like this V6 badging. It's like a very kind of old style thing. This logo itself, it kind of mimics the V8 badging of like the really early Fords in like the 30s and 40s. And you still see this on, I think, Ford and Lincoln products today. So this like sort of very stylized iconography of, you know, when it's like a sort of an upscale engine. And it doesn't look out of place to me. It gets a little busy with all this badging here, but I do like it, and I do like that they're bragging. Anytime a car's bragging about like an engine, it's like a very old school thing to me, and I like it. The graphics, where do we begin with the graphics? So obviously you have this two-tone paint, and the cool thing, as we'll look at some other pictures, is that Okay, here we have, you know, your iconic front picture, your old school, you know, pre-facelift grille, your headlights that are not flush mounted, they're your old glass headlights, some more. I mean, I don't mean to be glossing over this stuff, but it's stuff we've covered before, and this van is so special in terms of just like the aesthetics of it that I want to touch on those a little bit more, but we'll cover our bases. Now, in the last Latvian Aerostar, I mentioned that I thought maybe the badges, if it wasn't XLT or XL model, you know, one badge would be on one side and the other badge, it would only feature the sort of package on one of the badges. Now, this might just be a complete base level, and so it hasn't completely busted our theory. But obviously both badges just say Aerostar. There's no like XL or XLT here, and that's how I think they probably were. The other thing we'll notice is this, while this is a cargo version, you do see this window here. And as we circle around the back, we should probably, you know, address that sooner rather than later. You do have a hatchback here. Okay, so it is not a full cargo version. It's like a semi-cargo version. And what I'm realizing now is they made a lot of these like semi-cargos where you would have your panel van, but then you'd still have a lift gate or a tailgate in the back as opposed to barn doors. So it's sort of like this like hybrid, and to find them with barn doors is actually exceptionally rare. Now, I think this is actually quite nice because, you know, if you're going to be putting seats in here, and I don't even know if they have, you know, seat rails in here, but it's kind of cool. The tailgate's a little bit more, you know, like a normal car. I happen to like the barn doors a lot, and on a cargo version, I would think I would want the barn doors. But let's be honest, you're not really going to be using this vehicle as a work vehicle. It's clearly more of a show vehicle, and so I don't think you're losing anything by having the tailgate. Another funny thing is that, you know, the Aerostar went out of its way to make this big, long strip to accommodate you know, European license plates, and they're still using an American style squared off Netherlands plate, which you see, you know, I was in Germany this summer, you see a lot of German, like, you know, older American cars that have this plate on them. I don't know what the rhyme and reason is for it, but if you do go back and look at the front, it does have, you know, the European style plate, and I think that would look good back there, but, you know, not for me to judge, certainly. It looks like we have a little bit of some sort of diamond plating here. You wonder if that's to correct it, or if it's more likely it's just a protective measure to keep you from cracking the bumper when you step up into the back of the vehicle. Looks like we do have a tow hitch, and, you know, everything looks like really neat and tidy. These pictures aren't the highest resolution, but everything looks to be in really nice condition. I almost think this is a dark green. Maybe you do have some little bubbling up. I will say between the window and these little janks here, it looks like this car was, you know, custom painted. I don't think this is a factory color, obviously. And so, you know, again, for the asking price, you want this to be like pretty show quality. And if there are little nicks and dings, doesn't bother me, but you know, it would be a negotiating point. I'm wondering if there's another little piece of jank here, something going on. And you also have these beautiful little, like little reflectors that have been placed here, which may be a little gaudy, but I don't know. I think it works with the you know, all the colors going on. It looks like we do have white walls, which I have on my green Sport, which I think look fantastic with these colored steel wheels. Notably missing are white walls on the front. And I would also ask the dealer to go ahead and give me a new set of front tires with some white walls on them. Please and thank you. Okay. A little bit more aesthetics, and then I want to talk about this badge on the back of the car. So again, two-tone looks awesome, especially when it wraps around your taillights. So they did, I mean, you know, it's not like a really difficult thing to figure out. Like, you have these contours, these ridges, these stampings right in there. So it's already sort of tailor-made. Kind of, you just follow the contours of the vehicle. It'll tell you where to put the stripes. But I do love how the your off color, your B color, as opposed to your A color, which is actually more like an A and C color because it, you know, sandwiches the middle color. I like how it just frames these taillights perfectly, also frames your Ford logo, frames your license plate holder, and frames this badge here, which does that say Overdrive? I was going to try to ask the audience what this badge said, because I thought maybe it maybe this did say overdrive. I thought, this is exactly where my electronic fuel ignition badge sits on my 86 Aerostar, which has the 4-cylinder Lima 2.3 liter engine, which does have electronic fuel ignition as opposed to carburation. And, sort of jumping ahead here, but this does have the V6. It says it makes 116 horsepower. It says it's 2.8 liters. That would indicate that it's the Cologne V6, which is the carbureted V6 that came before the Vulcan V6, which was the 3-liter that came out supposedly in 88, but now we've seen earlier examples that claim to have it. This is a lingering mystery in our Aerostar sleuthing. But this just seems to say overdrive, which is weird because maybe, again, if this is truly a European model, maybe they're bragging about having an overdrive in their automatic transmission. And because, the badge looks identical, looks like it's in the same spot. The font doesn't necessarily seem the same as the electronic fuel injection, but then again, it's a much bigger version of it. It's a lot, so maybe it is actually the same font and they just really stamped it on there. And maybe they were bragging about overdrive. Especially with these early Aerostars, there's a lot that's lost to time and we don't really quite know how exactly everything was badged, the engines and all that. We seem to see some disparities. So, we're figuring it out here on Year of the Aerostar. Okay, a couple things to say about the engine bay, and then I will get back to the aesthetics, I promise. When this jumped out at me, I first said, okay, that's not the 3-liter, I know that, and I don't think it's the 2.3-liter either, because I have both of those and I'm somewhat familiar with identifying them. But the weird thing is, I also don't see a carburetor, but I think you kind of see here like what looks to be like a little plate where your sort of air cleaner would go. And then, here we go, it's a better picture of it right there. So I was like, okay, this is probably, a long time ago, I had a peek at the 86 Aerostar that I had with a 2.8 liter. But, to be honest with you, I didn't really become that familiar with it. Eventually sold the vehicle. And you have this big sort of belt apparatus here. I don't know, maybe that's your water pump. Again, you're really showing the limits of my mechanical knowledge here. Obviously, this is your alternator. Anywho, so I looked up, I was doing some information on the Ford Cologne engine, and we can do a little history lesson if you'd like. So the Cologne V6, really kind of amazing. A series of 60-degree cast iron block V6 engines produced continuously by the Ford Motor Company in Cologne, Germany since 1965. 1965. This engine is... So even in 1986, this engine was old, along with the British Ford Essex V6 engine and the US Buick V6 and GMC truck V6. These were among the first mass-produced V6 engines in the world. Okay, during its production run, the Cologne V6 has evolved through engine displacements 1.8, 2.0, 2.3, 2.4, 2.6, 2.8, 2.9, and 4 liters. Yeah, because I think actually, I believe the 4-liter V6 in the Aerostar and Ford Ranger is also called the Cologne V6. So that would be kind of hilarious if it was, really came full circle. We won't go through all this, but the 2.8 is interesting because that's the one we're looking at. Now it says in Europe, the 2.8 was produced with carburetor, 130 horsepower, mechanical fuel injection, Bosch K-Jectronic, 158 horsepower, and electronic injection, Ford, some sort of Ford system, 148 horsepower, which is weird because, the fact that it has 116 horsepower, the European approach was useful in the existing cars with the V4 engine. Could be upgraded with relative ease. Output was rated at 115 horsepower. So that's the one for the US market. Okay, so and 128 to 158 for the European market. So there's our sleuthing right there. The fact that it's listed at 116 horsepower means this is probably a US spec version. And the fact that it's carbureted doesn't really say much because it seemed like they were carbureted and fuel injected alternatively in both markets. Look at all these cars that this engine was in. Obviously a lot of Fords, but some notable exceptions. The TVR 280 I/Tasman. We'll get you a better picture of that. And shout out to Shooting Cars, a great YouTube channel that's really exploded in the last couple of years. He just does these very straightforward reviews, and he's really prolific, based out of Chicago, a fellow named Zach. I like his channel a lot, and so a little shout out to him. And he's just gotten so many good cars, it's amazing. So this is your TVR 280i, and this has the same engine as our Aerostar that we're looking at today. Isn't that funny? All right, moving along. Again, your stamping. Oh, the thing I wanted to mention here was that when I first saw this, I was like, dang, like they really like went above and beyond, because, you know, a lot of times when you see these wild painted cars, it's not, it's not a wrap, which is cool in the first place, but a lot of your interior engine bay and the bottom of your hood and everything have been painted. So they really went kind of the extra mile. Now, upon closer inspection, we can see that this was most likely a white van to begin with, because you can see some of the internal components, hood latch, and actually right now you can see some overspray. So it wasn't a perfectly tight tape job. So, you know, we're seeing it looks like they took the hood off, which is nice, or maybe they just taped around it. But certainly, you know, they could have done worse. I'll say that. Like they got the edges of the internal components, which is nice, because when you first open the hood, you don't just immediately see that color change. So pretty cool. Pretty neat. Now, again, another thing I was going to say, they did all the door jambs, which is also cool. The sills and all these internal components of your doors were all painted, so it really goes the extra mile in making it look like it was something of a factory paint job. Clashes pretty amazingly with your tan interior. This is almost identical to my 86 Aerostar interior, with the exception of the automatic transmission shift lever, and I have brown vinyl seats, which I've never ever seen. I don't know where these seats came from. Another one of the mysteries of the early Aerostars, how they seemingly had all these combinations that they didn't really tell people about. This just has some like sort of tan seats, and I also don't think these really look two-tone. Unfortunately, I don't think we have too many interior pictures of this vehicle, but this does have the lumbar support feature, which my 86 does, which is like, again, another weird ahead of its time thing. It's like a lazy boy chair. You can inflate it and deflate it, and it still works on mine, which is amazing. And when I called the owner of my 86 Aerostar, he went on and on about, that was like the biggest thing he mentioned, was like the lumbar support. Like he was all about the lumbar support in this vehicle. And so, you know, true to form, it has it. This is also great because we can kind of see this, like what I'm calling a dark green. Now it may just be, looks darker than it is just by in comparison of the light blue. We have almost like a retro Seattle Mariners thing going on here. This actual green actually looks quite close to the Cayman green of my 93 Sport, but you know, in contrast to this like really bright teal. Hard to completely tell what color that is, but then obviously you have sort of the white or cream going on too. Okay, here we go. Here's a nice shot of the back. Now it looks like the inside of one of your doors, this door was probably easy to take off, so they took it off and sprayed the back, and the rest of the interior, they were like, nah. So that's kind of funny. Also, you wonder what's going on with the exhaust system, because you have a giant muffler and pipe going on here. And then you have a MAN filter, which is great. So obviously it does look like a cargo version, which again is weird that you have the the closing lift gate here as opposed to a barn doors, but you know, that's the way they did it. It seems like you can get a cargo van with or without the barn doors, which again just speaks to how sort of customizable and modular the Aerostar was, and another just feather in its cap. Better look at this little diamond plating here. Now this is either to cover up a crack, or it doesn't really matter. Either way, it's kind of a really good idea. I almost think about doing this on mine, because this plastic is so brittle. By having this little cover here, it just makes stepping into the vehicle a lot safer for the bumpers. So I like that little touch, and the fact that it's black, you barely even notice it. Okay, and so you're getting, you got your tan interior, which again, you almost wonder if this Aerostar was stripped at some point, if this was a passenger vehicle that was stripped. Because usually on the cargo versions, you'd have like the vinyl seats and not these cloth seats. So yeah, really a mystery. Okay, again, your giant shift lever with your big button here, which is actually a very good, we don't always get such a nice view of it. Crank windows. Always nice. So you wonder if they took this off another car and then just like retrofitted a longer trend bar to make it all the way down here. And you have, what looks like some gadgetry going on here. I wonder if your carpeting was originally black with the rest of this being tan. That's a little odd. Although I guess mine is brown on mine, but even brown and tan seems to make more sense than like a black and tan. But I don't know, on a white Aerostar, I guess it makes sense. Anywho, another nitpick here is that, all this stuff I would think should get cleaned up for a, $13,000 Aerostar. Makes me think the price is a little high, but that's okay. Okay, so the reason why I think this is an American spec Aerostar is 37,873. Miles per hour is your predominant gauge, right? And then kilometers an hour is your secondary gauge, which all Aerostars, what was it, during the 80s at some point, they had a plan to switch over to kilometers per hour. If you can believe that, they were going to make everything kilometers per hour. So they're putting this there as like sort of to prep everybody to get ready. And it never happened, obviously, because Americans are stubborn and we love just, being difficult for the for the sake of being difficult. Anyway, neither here nor there. It's possible that they just it has kilometers on it, so it's like they didn't want to redo all the gauge clusters to sell a few thousand of these things overseas, right? So it could be that this is indeed a European model, and but then again, if it's measuring in miles, like, they made these in Canada, and the Canadian Aerostars all have kilometers on them. So you think they would just slap the Canadian badges on it if they were going to send them to Europe. So I think this is an American spec vehicle. I think it's 37,000 miles, not 37,000 kilometers. But, there you go. There seems to be a couple discrepancies here. The year, 1985, and the mileage, 37,000. Now they're advertising as kilometers, which mean only 23,000 miles. But a lot of mysteries in here. But that's not really important. The important thing on this, again, and we'll go back to it here and do it a little bit more analysis, is just how wild the aesthetics are on this. I mean, in addition to your green pinstriping on the top and bottom of this white stripe, now I'm wondering also if this is the original white of the van and they just painted it up here. That would have made sense. This almost looks like a little creamier than just like your standard white, but maybe that's just the light or some fading or what have you. Either way, these little green accents that are put on here in the back is a very nice touch there. And let's go look at the front again too. Because I really like that one. Here you can get a view of sort of the back and the front. It just sort of encapsulates the Aerostar. This angle's a little bit strange given the geometry of the rest of the vehicle, but I don't hate it. Let's look at that front one again, because this is really, really nice. The fact the line comes shooting out of the Aerostar logo, comes to a point and then sweeps all the way back, and then this doesn't quite come to a point. It's a little bit more blunted, but it follows the contour line. Sorry, my face is over this. Follows the contour line of the vehicle itself, which I like, and creates this like very nice, little like angular design. And then you have your like little pinstriping, which actually comes to a very sharp point, shoots out there by your wing mirrors. Now there's a lot going on, but it to me it doesn't, it kind of all fits together. And this is very typical of a lot of vehicles from this era, and even going back, and this almost has like a 50s or 60s thing. In fact, now that I'm talking about it, I'm glad I brought it up, because I just saw him bring a trailer, this International Harvester, which has like almost the exact same, this is a 1958 International Harvester, almost the exact same, color scheme going on, right down to your wheels that are painted, and then your predominantly blue over white interior. And this reminded me a lot of a Nash Metropolitan, and I've seen these, and I remember these. They had a yellow one was really popular, and a couple different colors, but the teal one was certainly one of the more popular ones too. And again, right down to the blue painted wheels with the white wall tires, and you even have red in the middle of your dog dish hubcap here. Here's another image of it. clearly going for that vibe. This is sort of a, again, blue wheels, white wall tires, dog dish hubcaps. So you're going for a real 50s, 60s thing. And it kind of works because, it has, the Wes Anderson movie Asteroid City, which I have not seen yet, but it's like this sort of bright pastel colors, these like sort of desert colors. And then the Aerostar is actually tailor-made for the Aerostar, because the Aerostar was based off the space shuttle, so it's all about, space travel and back in, if you've ever seen that movie The Right Stuff, like back in the desert in the 50s and 60s, Chuck Yeager, the first plane to break the sound barrier, all this rocketry and space and testing, and the 50s and 60s were this like wild time in terms of technology and aerospace and stuff like that, because it almost hasn't been eclipsed since then, in terms of like we haven't been back to the moon, blah, blah, blah. So this color scheme, the more I think about it, the more I really like this. This is a 1959 right here. This is a 1958. And here we have a 1986 or maybe 1985 taking on this like sort of retro 50s, 60s sort of design. I mean, obviously very like tried and true, formulaic. I don't mean that as a bad way, but just like it's a very like, what should I say? It's like a known style here. And they apply it to this 80s minivan, and somehow it works perfectly. Because it captures that aspirational aerospace feeling of that time period in a vehicle which, 30 years later, during a sort of like a secondary aeronautical space age pioneering. The 80s are all about the future too, with like, cassette tapes and CDs and all this like new technology was coming out. The digital age was really upon us, and it was like sort of a secondary sort of renaissance of this technological awakening, and the Aerostar's styling sort of perfectly encapsulated that, just like a 1953 Corvette at the New York Auto Show captured that similar like aeronautical. Now these were like fighter planes more, I guess, in that period, but same thing, like Saab was an airplane company, like the just as cars sort of replaced horses, the vehicle as a comparative creature to the aeroplane is just as big or true of a connection. So I don't know how to really land this plane, which is maybe a good metaphor for the subject matter I'm talking about. But to bring it down, I think this color scheme and colorway and just overall styling vibe fits so well on this particular vehicle. And I like that it's an 80s vehicle, because it really hammers home those points with the grille and the steel wheels and the big mirrors. I like it better than if it was a 90s Aerostar in this particular livery. And it's just unique, and I just love the wheels, and I just really, really like how it looks. And it's a fascinating and unique Aerostar, and the fact that it's in Holland somewhere, which we don't think of, like, Holland I certainly don't think of as some like flashy 80s digital techno land. I think of it more of like, Amsterdam and bridges and water and cheese. But, certainly the Dutch are very advanced when it comes to like engineering and all that. They built a city on water. Neither here nor there. I just really like this Aerostar. I thought it was unique, and it's a perfect way to sort of continue our foreign tour of Aerostars. So there you have it. I hope that was entertaining. I hope you enjoyed looking at these photos and listening to me blather on about, Aerostars and all other facets of automotive lore or something like that. So if you're in Europe and you got 12 grand, if it were me, I'm saying like 8,000 euros, 7,000 euros. I mean, I would want to see this thing in person. I would want to see those little paint blemishes, what's going on with the interior, why is the dog door removed, and all this janky stuff going on. Is there a carburetor for it? Is it fuel injected? Can we get because I think, you know, the last thing I'll say, if I can find this tab again, is some of these 2.8s were fuel injected, and it actually looks like a really cool package when you see this like sort of plenum on here. That's not gonna let me go over. You know, you can see right here, this looks like a 2.9 liter little plenum that they've put on. It's got probably your Bosch fuel injection system there. So you could go ahead and probably retrofit that onto this vehicle, and then you don't have to really worry about carburation if you're, you know, driving in different altitudes or whatever, and tuning the carburetor and all that. And I think that looks pretty nice. So maybe find yourself one of those, pop it on, and then you got all the technology to match the paint job. There you have it. I don't even know if my camera's rolling anymore, but that was certainly very fun. Thank you so much for joining us on episode 103 of Year of the Aerostar here on Janky AF. I have some emails to catch up on. A wonderful gentleman named Antonio has been sending me all sorts of beautiful updates to his Aerostar. So I will get back to you. Thank you everybody who's emailing me and sending me Aerostars. It's just really amazing, and I'm so happy to be part of this Aerostar community. There's, you know, people out there like Jason has over 5. He's got 5 Aerostars. Like, boy, I'm just looking for my 3rd, and he's already on 5. So the thing I've noticed about Aerostars is kind of like once an Aerostar owner, always an Aerostar owner, and also serial ownership. Like, I don't know that I've known. I know there's, you know, a lot of people, they'll get a Corvette, they'll upgrade to the next Corvette, they'll do that. Like, or a lot of people have, they'll own serial vehicles, but not at the same time. Like, people with Aerostars, they collect them, and it's crazy because, you know, outside of like someone like Jay Leno who can have 7 or 8 different Corvettes, and it's still only a fraction of his collection. I mean, he's got 2 Lamborghini Miuras. I've noticed with Aerostars that people, they like getting them and they don't like getting rid of them. So you often get people with not only serial Aerostar ownership, but, you know, concomitant serial multiple Aerostar ownership. So that's what I'm really starting to notice, is a lot of people with more than one Aerostar. And that's like really just like a great thing, because it you know, what I guess the Aerostar lacks in sort of global enthusiasm within the, you know, I guess the cheap cliche way would say it is that it has a cult following, you know, that people that are into it are really into it. And I personally like that. I like things like that because the community around it is so fervent, and that's really cool. So again, blathering on, thank you for watching. Thanks everybody for being here. We're marching towards 1,000 subscribers. We just got a big boon with our last video there. So we'll keep them coming. And again, we'll have another one coming very soon. Year of the Aerostar here on Janky AF. And until next time, Janky do Thanky. Get out of here.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.